'cause I'm all alone. Don't got no one to call to drive me home, 'cause I'm home, my babes are in bed. Honey gonna sleep it off when he's dead. I do it for them, I do it all 'cause I care. Now we sit on the stoop and we look ahead. Hey boy, baby you will fall, maybe you will lead them like the rest. Now we're blowing bubbles and chasing birds, singing so sweet, laughing into the world. Baby make me better before I break you under my. Back in the day, mama held me steady, steady. Back in the day, mama held me steady, had a fear that's steady. Back in the day, mama held me steady, steady.
And down the stretch they come, and you can hear the music of the Record Lounge coming in as we try to get you amped up for the final days of February here. That means March Madness is just a heartbeat away, and the hearts are pumping after a couple of big wins for the Michigan Wolverines. They continue their impressive run. The Michigan State Spartans, they get back on track, having to fight, scratch, and claw from behind, down by as many as 8 several times to Iowa in Tuesday night's game, and able to pull that out of the fire, get a big win, and maybe vault themselves onto the number 5 seed line where I currently have them, along with the Michigan Wolverines. And the sounds that you hear, Steady by Polika coming in, and we'll hear Foyer by Wild Nothing going out, brought to you by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. We'll hear from Heather Frowery coming up in just a little bit, the proud owner of the Record Lounge, proud sponsor of the Great Lakes Divide podcast, to which you are listening right now. And Bluebilly Tom Crawford had a chance to stop by in Rio Town at the Rio Town Marketplace south of Lansing. You just take Washington from 496 when you're in the downtown Lansing area, and there it is on the east side of the street, a beacon of freedom, of choice, of selection in music. Some of the great hi-fi stereo equipment. You can see it on Facebook if you're friends with Tom Crawford, and you should be, because who isn't? If you're not a friend of Tom Crawford, I think there's something wrong with you. And that's how I feel. He's just one of those guys. And you can hear him laughing in the background here as we get started with his Wolverines. And again, this impressive run, any other season, the way this has gone for Michigan, the way this has turned for Michigan, you might be looking at Juwan Howard being a candidate for Big Ten Coach of the Year, but there are so many great stories in the Big Ten. Of course, Rutgers has faded of late, but what a great start for Steve Peichel and the Scarlet Knights, still trying to hold on to a tournament bid, and I currently have them seeded 9 in the NCAA field. Pat Chambers, this is a guy whose job was being called for at the beginning of the season, and he has turned that into a contending team at Penn State, now 10-6, and just a couple of games back in the loss column of Maryland for the Big Ten lead, and so are the Michigan State Spartans, as they are all alone in second place at 11-6 following their win over Iowa. And with Maryland falling to Ohio State in Columbus over the weekend, just 2 back in the loss column. A lot could still happen, including a head-to-head matchup for MSU with Maryland, and they go on the road to play Penn State. Both those games in hostile environments for the Spartans, and we'll see how they handle that, but they get the big home win over Iowa, 78-70. And for the Wolverines, again, going back to this past weekend and their win over Purdue, 71-63 at Mackey, a game in which they were in charge for a large part of it. And before I get to the nitty-gritty numbers in this one, a 71-63 game in which they were largely in control, a little bit shaky there toward the end, couldn't hit free throws, and it was a little dicey, couldn't put them away entirely, but for the most part, I mean, a 15-point lead at halftime, Tom, 36-21. Again, 2 of the toughest environments to play in, at least this year in the Big Ten, handing Rutgers their first home loss in Piscataway at the RAC, handing Purdue a loss on their home floor. Now, this is a Purdue team that has clocked teams in Mackey this year, including Michigan State by nearly 30 points. What stood out to you in this performance for Michigan? Why were they able to go into West Lafayette and really control the tempo of this game and keep the crowd out of it for a lot of it?
Yeah, you can't overstate the accomplishment in terms of dealing with that Mackey crowd. I mean, this was a desperate Purdue team, and the wounded animal thing. I mean, they needed a Big Ten win. I mean, they're now 14-14, and they're in real dire straits to get into the NCAA field, Ryan. And yeah, they took them right out of it. But what I like about this Michigan team, and I'm saying this over and over, but it bears repeating, is the level of moving parts, the depth, and winning games in different ways with different people. And in this particular case, Isaiah Livers, he was out of the Rutgers game because that ankle turn that he had against Indiana, so he took that game off, comes back, nailing 8 free throws down the stretch when the rest of his teammates were clanking. He nails those 8 free throws to close it out. 36 minutes of effort for him, 19 points, just a terrific, and 6 boards, just a terrific display of contribution from Isaiah Livers. And then the other one is Franz Wagner. Oh, my God. I mean, 9 of 13 from the field. He had 22 points, 5 boards. And here, this is a guy that we had heard about going into the season before he broke his wrist. And he is starting to click right now, and that's huge come tournament time. One other name I want to throw in there because, well, actually 2 names. Zavier Simpson, Michigan wins this game by 8, arguably one of their best players, if not the best players, and he doesn't score a basket. That's incredible. Other thing, David DeJulius came in and was solid. He had a poke tip in there at a real critical time. He had 21 minutes more, or I take it back, 24 minutes, a little bit more than he normally does because Eli Brooks goes out with a broken nose. Who knows where that might lead to? But DeJulius was solid. 6 points. He had 3 rebounds, and he had 3 assists. I mean, just doing little things and not making mistakes. This is what I talk about. Where depth comes into play, and when you have just a lot of different contributions, and it seems to vary every night, that's the mark of a winning team.
This is a fascinating team to me, Tom, and it becomes more and more so as I watch them play because much like the Rutgers game, when you look tail of the tape and the numbers as they stack up, they don't look great for Michigan. They didn't shoot particularly well in this game. They were under 40%. They were just 6 of 25 from 3 for 24% there. They were out-rebounded in this game, 47-39. As Boudreau had 15 boards himself. Travion Williams off the bench had 10. And you look at the numbers, you just say, well, how is this going to end up going Michigan's way? To me, it's a couple of things. I go back to a comment that was made by Illinois, turning point of a season a couple years ago for Michigan. John Beilein, largely a tactician, a technician, very left-brain logical in his approach. Got that approach with Luke Yaklich on defense as well during his time there and turned them to a more well-rounded team, a smooth executing team on offense when they were firing on all cylinders. This team has a different feel and makeup of doggedness, of determination, of blue-collar work ethic, which, again, it's a lingering kind of phrase out there. Remember, Illinois said that Michigan just was a white-collar team. This is a blue-collar team, and they're going to defend you. The length of the floor, they're going to make life miserable for you. They're not going to let you get a lot of good looks or a lot of second-chance putbacks. They're going to force turnovers, and they're going to take care of the basketball. And that's what I saw in this game from Michigan. It was fundamentally sound. You're not going to make shots all the time, and you're certainly going to miss your fair share on the road in an unfamiliar environment, and that's what happened with Michigan here. But defense should never take a game off. That was again the case here. They defended hard. They defended well. They defended consistently. They had a plan coming in. They helped on defense. They talked on defense. So when you say, yeah, Zavier Simpson was 0 for 10 from the floor, 0 for 5 from 3, but he contributes in other ways. He defends. People don't give him enough credit for that. He had 7 rebounds from his point guard position. He had 6 assists. He only had 1 turnover. Michigan only had 3 total turnovers in this game. And as I watch the two teams, Tom, as you and I do, That's the biggest thing that stands out to me. The difference between Michigan and Michigan State right now, why I give a slight edge to the Wolverines, is they take care of the basketball, whereas Michigan State is willy-nilly, kind of hither and yon with the ball and throwing it away. Michigan doesn't do that. And the one time it happened, I think it was David DeJulius, it turned into a touchdown, so to speak, the other way for Purdue, but it stood out because it was so rare in this game, and that really is what's standing out to me about Michigan right now.
Yeah, and that actually did ignite Purdue a little bit. Turnovers for touchdowns, to use that Izzo term, is so appropriate. Yeah, really good point about Zavier Simpson finding different ways to contribute. And he still has that, even though the ball's not going down for him, and he missed a couple of layups, and his rolling hooks, his Jabbar hooks were not going down, but he still looks competent, and he's still totally in control. And I think that's just what he's all about. Another guy in that category, and I remarked about this in the Indiana game, and I saw more of it against Purdue, is John Teske, who is, let's be real, he's still having a hard time finishing, if we, for lack of a better term, on the offensive end. But he still contributed. He finds where he got 5 boards. He got 11 points in this game, just by scrapping his putbacks, and he had 4 assists as a pivot man. I thought that was critical in his 26 minutes of work. So, even guys who are kind of quote unquote being in a funk, another guy steps up. Brandon Johns, who's been so consistent, he had a couple open looks from the the coffin corner that he's going to have to nail. He's going to have to nail them come tournament time. He missed them both. He only scored 2 points in the game. He only had 11 minutes of work. But, I think that Juwan sees, okay, this is not a Brandon Johns game. Let's go another route on that. And then they had Julius, and then before Brooks got hurt, he was in there. They were sharing a lot of minutes. So it's funny how, it's interesting to see how Juwan takes every game like a different canvas of artwork, and how to win this game. And I really think Juwan Howard is one who is improving as a coach, and this is his first year as a head coach at the collegiate level.
So where does this leave Michigan in the grand scheme of things? Well, their 5th straight win. And again, they've gotten in this 5-game stretch 3 of those wins on the road, back-to-back wins at Rutgers, at Purdue, against tournament-caliber teams. Only 1 loss since the end of January, when they last lost that string of 4 games in which they were in a bit of a funk, and they had lost at home to Illinois, the second of 2 losses to the Illini on the season. They have since gone from 11-8 to 18-9, winning 7 of 8 games. Down the stretch they come. Their next contest will be Thursday evening in Chrysler Center at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. ESPN2 will have the coverage as the Wisconsin Badgers trying to position for their own seeds coming in. This will not be an easy task for Michigan. They don't really have any of those, with the exception of Nebraska perhaps, coming up. And then the 2 road games at Ohio State, where the Buckeyes just took out Maryland, the conference leaders, and then at Maryland, College Park, the final regular season game for Michigan before the Big Ten tournament. So still a lot of work to be done, but the long and short of it for Michigan right now is they have fought their way back above 500 in the Big Ten, 9-7 right now. They were ranked number 19 in the nation coming off of Monday, and again, they get this extra win. And the number that you really have to look at here is the net ranking. This has replaced the RPI, and the selection committee is even more devoted to the net than they were to the RPI. This is about quad 1, quad 2 wins. Anything outside of that really doesn't enter into the selection committee's minds unless you're getting down to those 13, 14, 15, 16 seeds and those conferences that tend to play amongst each other, those size of schools. For Michigan, though, you look at their overall net ranking of 22. That's a little bit deceptive because, again, you go to the column, and I recommend warrennolan.com for this, of the Q1 and Q2 wins. Michigan has 7 quad 1 wins. They're 7-8 in that category, so 15 of their 27 games have been quad 1 matchups, and that's determined by whether they play home, neutral, road, and whether it's against a fellow net top 25, 50, or 75 team. I know this is a lot that I'm throwing at you, but basically you get more credit for a road win against maybe a slightly lesser opponent than you would on your home floor against a greater opponent. Michigan also 4-1 in quad 2 games. They have not lost, meaning bad losses, a quad 3 or quad 4 game. They're 7-0 combined in those two categories. So Michigan lacks any kind of bad loss. Their best win, of course, remains against Gonzaga. But who would have known, Tom? I want to get your take on this, too. When you look at the Michigan schedule and how it unfolds and who they played and who they beat, that their second best win of the year was their second win of the season at home against Creighton, 79-69. This is a Creighton Blue Jays team right now that projects to be a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. And that's turning out to be a very big win.
You took me right where I wanted to go. I watched pretty much a lot of that game. Creighton absolutely devouring Butler.
Yes.
A good Butler team, which has been sliding lately, but just obliterated them. And they were up by 30 points early in that second half. Yeah, Creighton is a gem of a win. And then you got Gonzaga, who lost their second game, but they're still a top 2 or 3 team. Yeah, the schedule, I mean, Michigan right now, I think going into this week, their strength of schedule was number 4 in the country. Well, that's pretty doggone good. So they're right now, I call it polishing the stone, if you will, for seedings in both the Big Ten and the NCAA ultimately, but they need to stay in the moment. And staying in the moment is getting ready for this Wisconsin team, which is pretty doggone hot as well. So and sometimes I think these Michigan home games, they've been, particularly in the first half, they get a little too comfortable. So I'm hoping to see at 7 o'clock on Thursday night that they jump on Wisconsin early and often and just don't let the Badgers entertain any ideas that they're going to stay in this game. Against Indiana, they kind of let them hang around before they blew them out, and I think they really got to hammer Wisconsin. They need this win to get where they want to get. They want to get to Friday. They want to get that double bye. Maybe that's a stretch. But if they get these 2 wins and grab one of those 2 road games, either in Columbus or in Maryland, obviously in Columbus is the easier one of those 2. They're going to be in great shape to get that double bye.
To get the double bye, to get some experience in the Big Ten tournament, maybe get a win or 2, the Wolverines are hoping, and then their sights set on bigger fish to fry, so to speak, in the NCAA tournament, where I have them solidly on the 5-seed line right now. You look at, again, the games that they played, who would have known that North Carolina would have turned out to be not so great of a win? It was at the time, but in the committee's eyes, in terms of what the overall picture is, it won't boost their resume as much as maybe previously thought. The win over Creighton is doing that and kind of taking up the slack. The win over Gonzaga, of course, is their primary kind of achievement on the season. They lost at Louisville. No shame in that. I have Louisville currently sliding from the 2 seed to the 3 seed line after their loss to Florida State. They lost at home. This is a tough one, the overtime one to Oregon. Oregon I have as a 4 seed. So you have all these teams right now that would be slated ahead of Michigan, but a couple of them, Creighton and Gonzaga, that they've beaten. And now this stretch run. And Brad Davison and Demetric Trice and the guys come in for Wisconsin. Again, a 7 p.m. start, ESPN2. At Ohio State after that. Our next podcast will take place after that Ohio State game on Sunday evening. We'll get talking, Tom and I, after he does press pass there in Lansing. And then again, early March, it wraps up with Nebraska in Ann Arbor, and then Michigan making the trip to College Park and taking on Maryland. That could have big implications across the Big Ten, including for Michigan State. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Once again, the Wolverines victorious at Purdue, 71-63. Franz Wagner gets it going. When the Wolverines are getting the type of contribution you can get from him, but because of injury that set him back at the beginning of the season, maybe it's taken a while for him to get going, but get going he has. He's been the team's leading scorer in 2 of their last 3 games, including 22 against the Boilermakers in that 71-63 win. With Blue Belly Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. You're listening to the Great Lakes Divide podcast, and we appreciate you subscribing, downloading, listening, telling your friends, and we appreciate most of all the sponsorship of the Record Lounge in Rio Town. And Tom Crawford had a chance to stop by a little bit earlier this week for his Tom's Take. We're including it here. That conversation is Heather Ferrari. I provide the visual here that you can't see on the podcast. The stereo equipment lined up against the wall, a bunch of albums she's going through, and Tom Crawford had a chance to talk to her about those right here.
Hi, and welcome to Take It Back Tuesday for Tom's Take with my good friend Heather Ferrari at the Record Lounge in Rio Town in South Lansing, or on South Washington in Lansing. And hey, besides records here at the Record Lounge, hardware. I tell you what, when I was in college, I had a Pioneer 838, 50 watts per channel. But no, the guy next door had to get 75 watts per channel. It was like just like a muscle competition with wattage. But I tell you what, you have a pretty receiver right here. This takes me back.
Oh, this is awesome. This did not look like this when it came in.
Well, how did you do that?
So Mike, the technician, takes it home, takes it all apart, cleans everything, every little nook cranny, recaps everything, brings it back, and it looks like this.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So you had a customer from Detroit who just kind of found you, came all the way up here, made some hardware purchases. What kind of satisfied customer was that?
Amazing. He did a post yesterday on our Facebook page, just showing the Sansui G3000, and that is a really nice receiver. He had a Technique 1200 turntable on top.
Oh, I remember that name.
Oh, yeah. So, and then he bought some records too. We've got the Best in Soul and Funk, and he bought a lot of it. So he just was thanking us for the sweet receiver and records.
Oh, it's go vinyl or go home, right?
Amazing.
Again, the Record Lounge, where are you located, Heather?
1027 South Washington in Rio Town.
And you're open every day but Mondays?
Yep. Tuesday through Thursday, 11 to 6, Friday, Saturday, 11 to 7, and Sundays, noon to 3.
All right, Heather. Okay, and for another time, tune in tomorrow. Thanks so much, Heather.
Thank you.
Make it a great day.
And that's true. Tom Crawford right there with our good friend Heather Ferrari. I always like having her cameos on the Great Lakes Divide podcast there. And I could see what Tom was talking about with her, that receiver that they have refurbished. And Tom, that is the thing that really stands out to me. You can go to any record store and they might have a tremendous selection, not as good as the Record Lounge, but they kind of specialize in that. They go a step further with the equipment that you need to replicate the experience of playing these vinyl albums like you did as a student at University of Michigan. And I saw just the wonder in your face as they brought these old stereo systems back to life.
I swear to God, Ryan, it looked like it was brand new. It's amazing. Mike Hertek did a tremendous job. You know, ironically, millennials are getting into this thing. I've heard this from multiple sources. I mean, and so this is I don't think this is just a short-term fad. I mean, this is a long-term passion to go back where you had the receiver, you know, and you had the turntable, and you put the LP on there and you listen, and it's just different, and just embrace those moments and those great songs from those great artists from years gone by. And you go in there and she's got such great inventory. It's just amazing. It's really nostalgic for me, so I always enjoy every visit that I go over to the Record Lounge in Rio Town.
Her collection continues to grow. You can also sell, if you have old records that maybe you don't have any use for anymore, she'll buy those for you, turn those around, get them to a collector that is looking maybe for something that you can't find anywhere else. And new music every Friday. As Tom mentioned, they press the vinyl still, and the youth of America getting back into that kind of vinyl original music experience phase. And it's great for business at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. You're looking for a great kind of unique birthday gift, something like that, or something to build your own collection. You can find it, and if they don't have it for you at the Record Lounge, they will hunt it down. She's got connections throughout the great state of Michigan. They'll find it for you, special order it, bring it back in store. Collectibles, too, like many types of box sets, live performances that you won't find anywhere else, you can find at the Record Lounge. Make it a destination stop. As Tom mentioned, there was a customer that came in from Detroit, just happened to find the Record Lounge by chance. Well, find it on purpose. Have a purpose going into the Record Lounge, and you can come in from Grand Rapids, from Detroit, from anywhere in between, up north in the lower peninsula there, or even Ohio and Indiana, and make the Record Lounge part of your visit to the state capital of Lansing. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Turning now to the Michigan State Spartans, and they trailed by 6 at halftime to the Iowa Hawkeyes, 78-70, the final score, but 33-27, they found themselves down. It was an uphill climb the entire game. There was a huddle in which the ESPN broadcasters basically said, Tom Izzo turned to Cassius Winston and said, you have to carry us right now, and carry the Spartans. He did. 37 minutes, he scored 20 points. He was hitting from 3, including a key sequence in this game. Michigan State had fallen behind a couple of times by as many as 8 points. It never got out of hand, though, and that was important for MSU to mount their comeback, and they did so on the strength of some better perimeter shooting. There was a sequence where Cassius, about 15 minutes to go in this one, hit a three, had a layup, made another three, and turned what was a 49-41 deficit into just a 51-49 deficit, cutting it to 2. And down the stretch, Michigan State able to create some separation. They got game performances from Rocket Watts, another one from him. He was the team's leading scorer. In fact, he was the game's leading scorer for either side at 21 points on 9 of 17 shooting. Watts was hunting his shots, finding them, getting them, making them, and especially from inside of 3, where he hit 7 of 10, 70% of his 2-point buckets in this one. Aaron Henry similarly had 17 points, also contributed 6 rebounds, 4 assists, was 5 of 10 from the floor, and despite a 1 of 4 shooting performance from 3, he was 4 of 6 from inside the arc. You notice a theme generating here as well. Not a lot of production off the bench. You know, the message, though, that Kyle Arns sent, I think the toughness that you witnessed from Michigan State in this game, despite being down at home, the Izzone stayed in this game, mentally focused and cheering their team on and keeping them in the game. And I think Michigan State able to pull this one out of the fire as a result. Another one, very good defense on Luka Garza. I mean, there's only so much you can do to slow down the presumptive Big Ten player of the year. And Zavier Tillman was instrumental in that. No, he didn't have a great night on the offensive end, but his efforts were focused defensively on Garza, blocking shots, forcing a travel, getting in his way, and they were doubling down on him at times. I thought that was a smart move. Garza played all 40 minutes in this one and shot a very pedestrian 8 of 21 from the floor for his 20 points. He had to earn them. He took more shots than he scored points. He was 0 of 5 from 3, never looked fully comfortable in this game, and that's a big reason why MSU was able to win it. And I want to make sure Zavier Tillman gets his due credit. Despite only 6 points, he had those 6 boards, 2 block shots. And Thomas, you watched this game transpire last night. And Michigan State trailing, like I said, a couple of times in this one by as many as 8. Never got quite out of hand there. Always able to hang around and able to turn the corner in this one. A tough Iowa team. What stood out to you in this performance for the Spartans?
Well, I'm going to go back and double, basically endorse what Dan Dockage said. There was I think it was 8 points early in the second half, and Rocket Watts hit a 3 from the top of the key. Who had a terrific game. Rocket Watts is there's a future star for Michigan State basketball. There's 21 points. He hit a 3. I think he took it to 5. And Dockage goes, if Michigan State comes back, let's look at that 3. Well, that was a relevant 3. I mean, you can talk about how great Cassius was, and he really was. He was out there having fun. It looked like the old Cassius from a year ago in the Big Ten tournament when I saw him up close and personal, where he was totally command of the game. He played great defense. We all know about that. But Rocket Watts, I think, is definitely a guy that's going to be a key cog on this Michigan State team for this stretch drive of the Big Ten and then on to postseason play. But Zavier Tillman, you're so right about that, Ryan. In particular on Luka Garza and the back maybe 6 or maybe even 4 minutes of that game, they weren't even doubling down. He was taking Luka out by himself. That one particular stop down there along the baseline in front of the Iowa bench on that side of the court, which really jacked the crowd, was a big moment in this game. And I thought, Breslin, I said this, the Michigan game, I said this at the Maryland game when they made the comeback, and then I'll say it again. I mean, there's been some noise bursts from this Michigan State crowd, in particular the Izzone. They have really gone to a higher level than I can recall in recent memory. And, it's puzzling because they've had better teams. And this has been a season that Michigan State, let's just say, is underachieved. But it's like this crowd wants to nudge this team, forward and get them where they're supposed to get. And I thought the crowd was of MVP caliber last night at the Brez.
No doubt about it, and this is one of the reasons why I just didn't see Michigan State losing 3 in a row on their home floor. Iowa was a tough team, and for a while there it looked like they might come in and do just that. But after the back-to-back home losses to Penn State, and then the collapse against Maryland, in which a 7-point lead turned into a 7-point defeat, and the Terrapins outscored the Spartans 14-0 down the stretch. Iowa comes in, and they were throwing their weight around a bit, able to hit some big shots themselves. Able to out-rebound Michigan State in this one. This is a concerning trend that continues even in a win for Michigan State. Iowa had a 40-32 rebounding edge in this game. There were still some very ponderous turnovers by MSU, and they only had 11 for the game, but some of them were just the variety where they're not forced errors. They're just giving the ball away. Just taking better care of the basketball needs to be imperative for the Spartans. Did get that assist-to-turnover ratio I've talked about in the past from Cassius Winston, 3-1. He had 9 helpers, 3 turnovers. You'll take that to his 20-point total as well. Malik Hall came off the bench, and he had a strong game. Only scored 4 points, but had 6 rebounds. Was a big part of that defensive effort against Garza, providing some double teams. Was able to do it, providing that big body down low that was able to hang with him. This was a gritty, gutty win for MSU to improve to 19-9 overall. That ties Iowa. I believe it put Michigan State up on the 5 line now. I had them on the 6 seed line prior to that. Maybe they flip-flop spaces with Iowa in this one. Their net ranking remains very good. Mentioned Michigan earlier at 22. Michigan State's now at 12. They are 6-8 in quad 1 games. Michigan is 7-8, so keep that in mind. And Michigan State is 5-1 in quad 2. So when you combine the two, both Michigan and Michigan State are 11-9 in those valued and targeted quad 1 plus quad 2 games, and that will factor into seeding. So right now, I have both the Spartans and the Wolverines as 5 seeds with the opportunity to climb that ladder a little bit. And Tom, as you look at the long scope picture for either school, I'm looking at the projections by Joe Lunardi, by Jerry Palm with his bracketology at CBSSports.com, my own. And I'm looking at matchups. You consider the fact that Michigan State earlier this year won at Seton Hall. I've got Seton Hall as a 3 seed. Michigan beat Creighton. I've got Creighton as a 3 seed. It's just a rising tide kind of lifts all boats, but the Big Ten looks like they're going to be lurking a bit. Maryland might have been knocked down to a 3 seed possibly with a loss to Ohio State. You got Michigan State and Michigan hanging in there as a 5. Iowa in that same kind of realm, a 5 or a 6. Ohio State I have as a 6 seed. I mean, these are the slight upsets that you might see in round 2, say a 5 over a 4, a 6 over a 3, that I think the Big Ten might be poised to have a very strong representation in the NCAA field.
Yeah, really good points, and it's fun to project about seed lines, and we see Joey Brackett's doing it all the time, and you do a great job with it too, but the bottom line is there's so much body of work to go. There's so many big games to go in the Big Ten in the regular season that's going to alter all those seedings and position in the Big Ten tournament, who plays on Wednesday, who plays on Thursday. It's amazing how much more work we have to get done through this regular season, which is going to alter all those projections. But I want to, and I think both Michigan State will do well in the postseason. I got to see matchups to really define that, how far I think they'll go. But I think they're both. I mean, Michigan State has now got off the canvas, and they got 2 wins in a row. And I think they'll, even though they might not win the rest of all these games. I mean, they could split them or whatever. I mean, they could play well and split these games, but I think they're playing better as well as Michigan. We've talked about that. But the team I want to talk briefly about is Iowa. And there's a guy that did not play in this game. His name is C.J. Frederick. And every time I've watched Iowa this year, he hits big shot after big shot. He was hurt. He averages about 10 a game. When they get him back, it'll be a little bit like Michigan getting Livers back. Maybe not to that magnitude. I think Iowa is going to have a terrific NCAA run. I think Iowa is going to represent the Big Ten very well come March Madness.
I like that take. I do a lot. And remember last year, they had a bit of a run there, and people kind of mocked Fran McCaffrey not being a good coach in March or not getting the most out of his team at times and not playing defense when it matters most. But they were relatively solid on that end of the floor last night. You make the key observation about what they were missing. Garza only had 20 points in this game, but is the average team out there when Iowa's, let's say, seeded 5 or 6 in that first round, even second round, going to be able to handle a Luka Garza when they haven't seen him? Probably not. And they have contributors. I thought it was interesting that Connor McCaffrey stepped into a role and hit a couple of threes in big spots against Michigan State in Tuesday night's game. And they've got a lot of different weapons, a lot of different looks. I think they're very well coached. I'm not as down on Fran McCaffrey as maybe some others are. They shot relatively well in this game, 40% against MSU, but Michigan State shot so much better on the whole in this victory. 50% from the floor. That speaks volumes. Hit very well from the free throw line overall to 17 of 23. Not great from three. Didn't have to be. And I'm going to ask this question of both teams. I'll answer it for Michigan State first. Tom, I'll give you time to think about it for Michigan. But that is, what is the biggest question left remaining that each team has to answer? For me and MSU, I think there are some questions that have been answered. You obviously know about Cassius Winston, his role, what he needs to do and contribute, and they're nothing. They're lost without him. Zavier Tillman, again, not necessarily about the numbers against Iowa, but the neutralization factor of a Luka Garza in this game and getting the victory. Rocket Watts is coming into his own. I think he's no longer a freshman now. It's kind of the line that Tom Izzo uses about freshmen become sophomores in February and March, and that's holding true for him. To me, the pivotal point and the question to be answered is Aaron Henry, and how consistent can he be in these games? If he continues to fill the columns in rebounds and assists, if he continues to play smart basketball and his IQ, which is off the charts, and he really thinks the game well, if he doesn't overthink it, if he doesn't get dinged in the confidence column, he doesn't have to necessarily score big points, but to have the role that he has, he is so pivotal. I think because as Aaron Henry goes, I think you can dictate that's where Michigan State goes. If he has a big game like he did against Iowa with the 17 points, 6 boards, 4 helpers, they're probably going to win. If he doesn't, you're scrambling. And maybe you're looking for a Gabe Brown who didn't score in Tuesday night's game against Iowa to contribute, to step up. You have to lean a little bit harder on Rocket Watts than he otherwise might have. Where are you going to get that contribution, that production from? Aaron Henry, to me, is that turnkey player for Michigan State. That's the biggest question left to answer. My biggest question for Michigan, I'll turn it to you, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, just health. Health for Michigan. Livers stay healthy. And then contrasting that, like we saw in this game against Purdue, he takes a shot to the chops, Eli Brooks, and has to depart the game. Tom, any latest that you've heard on that going forward? And it just seems like Michigan, through no fault of their own, just can't seem to keep everybody healthy and intact on this roster.
No, I haven't heard anything, and I think that we're going to see the Rip Hamilton mask, obviously, for Eli Brooks,
right,
coming back. There still hasn't been any notification of that. We'll probably hear more about that today. But to answer your question about two elements on Michigan, and it's not individual players. They're almost like team viewpoints on this. It has to do with free throw shooting at closeout time. That was very good against Rutgers. But 15 to 23, and they had a lot of misses in this stretch drive of this Purdue game to close this game out. And boy, when you get into tournament time, you got to knock down free throws. When you're getting into lead preservation, and in particular the point guard. Zavier, he missed a few early on, but then he hit some down the stretch. Livers was money. But you have to figure out who is going to be that guy. Who is going to be the Derek Walton, the Duncan Robinson, who you want to have the ball when that full court press comes on, when that foul is made by the opposition to extend the game. And maybe it's going to be Franz Wagner. He had that bad miss in the Illinois game that devastated him, that could have won that game, a couple free throws. So, free throws is huge. And then let's go back to perimeter shooting, which is, does Michigan shoot well? They were 6 of 23 or whatever, I think, in that range. Again, bad beyond the arc, and they still won the game. This is what they were against Michigan State in the January 5th game. They were like 5 of 23. But once again, finding ways of winning games in different ways. The shot beyond the arc, the old Beeline formula, Didn't work this time, but they still beat Purdue on the road. So I think shooting, I know it sounds pretty simplistic, but shooting beyond the arc and free throw shooting are the two team categories that are going to key for Michigan when it comes to March Madness.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, they do the little things. They do the hard work necessary. They are a blue-collar team, unlike the Slam. Again, I referenced earlier in this podcast from Illinois some years ago, calling them a white-collar team. That's not the case here. They're going to do the dirty work on defense, on the boards, just consistently being annoying to play against. That's a great thing to be if you're Michigan, and they are exactly that, and they're hoping that they can add, as Tom just said, a little bit of shooting touch to that, whether it's from beyond the arc or at the line, to be able to convert, to be efficient offensively, I think is going to be key. And Michigan will next be tested again on Thursday night at Chrysler. Tom Crawford, our own, will be there. ESPN2 will have the televised coverage, 7 p.m. start time with the Badgers in town. Michigan State next in action this Saturday afternoon at Maryland. Back-to-back road games here, tough against two of the top teams in conference. At Penn State would be next. But this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, ESPN in College Park. If they want to have any hint, prayer, or long-distance Hail Mary shot at the Big Ten regular season title, MSU has to win this game, and it will not be an easy task. Our next podcast will follow those two games, recapping them for you, because on Sunday, then Michigan goes to Ohio State, and that will not be an easy test. Remember, that's the only game Michigan has lost since their January 25th home loss to Illinois was at Chrysler against Ohio State, 61-58. So as soon as that game's done, that's a 4 o'clock start on CBS. Tom Crawford will take his talents to the Fox 47 television studio and record Press Pass with Jack Ebling. And for Tom's sake, I hope it's in the wake of a Michigan win. And then we'll record our podcast later that night. And you can look for it to be posted sometime around 10 p.m., 11 p.m. probably in the Eastern time zone. So 2 games for Michigan. We'll be recapping in that time. A lot can happen between now and then, and we'll see what the Wolverines are able to do in improving their seed and their stock, not only for the NCAA tournament at large, but for the Big Ten tournament, which is going to be some kind of gauntlet coming up here in mid-March itself. One final note I want to hit on, the Lutchka family, very big in Grass Lake, a farming community, and they are one of the big farming names. Derek Lutchka, a high school baseball teammate of mine from Grass Lake, now lives out here in Colorado, not far from me in Loveland, running his own cattle farm. Well, his niece, Gabrielle Lutchka, made history this past Thursday night for Grass Lake, a sophomore wing, scoring a state record 16 made three-pointers. Think about that. 16 threes. That's 48 points in three-pointers alone against woebegone Manchester, beating up on the Flying Dutch 95-31 in Cascades Conference action. She might have been able to continue that record, but, Grass Lake let off the gas pedal a little bit. She scored 58 points, Gabrielle Lutchka did, in setting that high school record for the most made three-pointers in a game in the MHSAA. So a tip of the cap to Gabby Lutchka there, one of my homegirls from Grass Lake. A particular amount of pride for me in this one, and they've got a great team. She's getting looks from various schools throughout the state of Michigan, Bowling Green in the MAC, and only a sophomore. We'll see if she adds to that as well. But keep an eye on that name, Gabby Lutchka from Grass Lake. Tom, final thought, Jerry Springer style, as we round out the podcast here today.
Compelling weekend coming up. You got Michigan State going to Maryland. Good Lord. On they're flipping the game day. I mean, so they did the game day. Wasn't the game day of the Maryland game in East Lansing? Now they're doing the game day at Maryland in College Park. Michigan State is the visitor. Huge game, huge opportunity for Michigan State, and then Michigan against Ohio State. So we're going to learn a lot about our teams this weekend, Ryan.
We certainly will. And again, 2 Michigan games between now and then when we next speak to you on Sunday night. We'll see where the Wolverines come out and where the Spartans stand after their trip to College Park taking on Maryland. That'll do it for us from here for now. For Bluebelly, Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. The sounds of the Record Lounge and Heather Frary taking you out. You can find these new releases each and every Friday on vinyl at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. We appreciate their support. We appreciate yours. Be sure to subscribe, download, listen, and share with your friends on every platform. We're available for podcast listening. Also, you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at GL Divide. It's the Great Lakes Divide. We're proud to bring it to you. We'll talk to you again on Sunday night. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody.